What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Experience More podcast. Pumped and excited to be able to have you back here with me today. Hopefully, today is going to be a fun, really storytelling day. So in this episode, going to be a solo cast, but more or less bringing you guys along for the story of what really was the 24 elk season, the solo hunt, the family hunt, the hunt with my 10-month-old daughter. And really, I just want to set the stage here for each and every one of you guys. You know, for those of you guys who are newer coming into the page, really the whole purpose of this entire podcast is just allowing individuals to come in and learn from other people's experiences, learn from their stories, the tools, the tactics, everything that they ultimately have to get out and experience more of life. Whether that is really, rooted in the overall health and wellness and just living a healthy, fit, active lifestyle, allowing you to experience more of the outdoors. But we can dive into things when it comes into different tips, tricks, and tactics, what to expect, whether you're hunting Midwest, out West, any of those things, and really just bringing great-minded individuals along for the ride. And I'm not going to be beating around the bush. I honestly am only going to have individuals on that I would love to be able to hear their story or be a part of that story and hopefully bring each and every one of you guys some sort of value that you can apply to your life in just day-to-day life. And then, of course, out in the hunting woods and experiencing more of the great outdoors and everything we love to be able to go out and get after and do ourselves. So, but to set this entire experience going out west, okay, it was mid-season, right? Had put in a draw for a tag at a unit that I had hunted for years with my father growing up. Literally ever since I was 8 years old, this is the place where I had gone and went on my first elk hunt that my dad made me go through and ultimately test out and prove to him that I could survive in the backcountry. And this is a unit 3-4 years ago had switched over to draw only. So I've not been able to hunt this unit for really at this point in time, approximately 3 years. So I was really more or less not expecting to draw a tag for the 2024 season. I more or less just put in to start building points to be able to have the opportunity to hunt there again in the future, right? So I had put in for this unit really just outside of Pagosa Springs, Colorado. For those of you guys who are around the Colorado area, it is a beautiful, small, mountain town. And then Wolf Creek Pass is just up the way from that, but a beautiful spot. I remember rolling coolers in with dad and the uncles back when you could just bring a cooler of beer in and go sit in the hole next to the river. But it is natural sulfur hot springs. It is a phenomenal treat to be able to just go in to town and soak in those hot springs after you spent 4, 5, 8 days out in the backcountry just getting your butt kicked, right? So awesome place, Pagosa Springs, phenomenal spot. If you're even just passing through and want to be able to go check out a little gem out there, awesome place. So I really just wanted to build points. When I went in and put in for this tag, lo and behold, little did I know that I would end up drawing that tag in the first year of putting in for points, and drew the unit that I wanted. And I did not know I had drawn this unit because honestly, I got caught up with work and just life and being a new dad and just really had forgot. My plan was not to go hunting, but to build points and to potentially go out maybe over the counter or something like that. But being a new dad, having a new little girl at home, I was not planning on hunting in the 2024 season for at least going out west, right? And just kind of allocating more of that time to the Midwest and whitetail and everything there. But I found out that I drew that tag when my credit card was charged the $800+ and wondering what that was. And that at this point, I needed to have a conversation with my wife and be like, you'll never guess what happened. You have to understand, I have to be a very good storyteller to my wife and really try and figure out how to make this her idea and all grandiose schemes to it. So, but the beautiful saint that she ultimately is, she deals with a lot of random things. She never knows, what I'm going to throw her way. And she has this knack of knowing when I want something or have to be able to go through and have a conversation with her. So in just Jake fashion, I ultimately came to her one afternoon and said, babe, guess what? You'll never believe what happened. And she's, of course, like, boy, here we go again. And man, was she right. So, but that's really the start of all of it, right? I want to really just take a jump back right now, and we're going to get right into the story here. I really just want to say for each and every one of you guys who follow along on the podcast, thank you very, very much. Been out of it for a minute, of course, being a new dad and everything going on. I stepped away, coming back full-fledged. I'm going to make this a priority and make things rock and roll within it. I appreciate still the love, the support, and just like you guys going through and sharing the show and leaving the reviews and everything on there. So just wanted to say thank you, give credit where credit is due in that piece. I got big goals and visions and plans with the show as a whole, and just the experience more essence overall. And you guys have been nothing but awesome for that. So just wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you guys for sharing the show. If you're brand new here, appreciate having all of you guys here. Really going to be looking at putting out a show at least once a week is the goal, whether that is a double show or a dual with a guest on, a solo show, or a product review or a gear review of some sort. Going to be building some different things out and give this show ultimately some legs overall. So appreciate the support and really going out, liking, sharing. And if this episode as well, guys, is really one of the first ones that's going to be I have aspirations of getting it up on YouTube. So really working at building out the Overdose Outdoors YouTube channel. And that's really going to be the main hub of Overdose Outdoors, or the Experience More podcast is going to be really hosted and presented by Overdose Outdoors. So, and we're just going to continue to build out this entire ecosystem and community of individuals. So appreciate you guys coming along for the journey, but let's get into it. I'm not going to waste your time any more here. Gotta take a sip of the good old 1P energy. Just gets the juices flowing. So, all right, let's jump back into it. So, got a tag. At this point, I had to go through and convince my wife, not really even convince her, but have the conversation with her about what is about to happen. Having that conversation with my wife, it was very, very simple. You know, I told her that I had a tag, needed to figure out how to go on this hunt. There's something inside of me, though. I mean, this is where, it's more of a challenging piece. Like most of the time, and this is where I hear it in the outdoor space, and I've had a lot of conversations on this, is as men and just guys in general, we almost use like deer camp or hunting to get away from the family. Oh, this is my time. This is the time. But I really want you to think about just like, honestly, the essence of the Experience More show. I get more joy out of bringing other people out and allowing them to experience the outdoors. Like, I love it solo. I love being able to be out there in nature. Honestly, there's sometimes where it's like it's just something needed because it's a very spiritual, grounding experience that no one will truly understand until they're actually out there in it themselves. Like, that is, I've said it numerous times. Friends and anyone who knows me close, the closest I ever feel to my maker is at about 5 a.m. when those clouds are just rising out of the mountain basins, and it's just like a white sea, and nothing is really woken up yet. The woods and just the world is starting to come alive, and at that moment, you feel so, yet have such a sense of, at least I do, a sense of like grand, euphoric, easiest way to say is gratitude of just where you are in that moment. If you're taking it in and taking the moment to take a stop and really appreciate where you are, right? So that is just a special moment for me to be able to go out and do that. And I say all of this because it is very hard for us to detach as men going out and doing these things and getting into our guy groups, and whether it's hunting, fishing, I grew up in it. I'm a Midwest country boy, farm kid from central Wisconsin, and going to deer camp was for the guys, right? And, it's one of those things that I really just want to be able to change the dynamic to it, especially with having a daughter, with having a wife, and a wife that ultimately, had family, and maybe, she wasn't necessarily super into the outdoors or anything like that, or fishing, but really the only reason that, she was brought along to go fishing was to have another line in the water, or really was never introduced to the outdoors or allowed to go hunting or anything of that nature. So it's like, hey, this is a cultural issue. This is something that we have the opportunity to present to other individuals. And when I look at this, is like, it's a great opportunity to be able to be present, right? Because if there's one thing I think that is the most important thing we can do as men, as fathers, is to give our kids the opportunity to come along, regardless of if it's a boy or a girl. Like, give them all the opportunities to share the experiences with you. And that's something I can say from the bottom of my heart. My parents, my mom and dad, both did very, very well, no matter how busy they were, what they were doing, and out of necessity. Like, we didn't have all the luxuries that we have nowadays, but they brought me along, whether it was riding in the tractor, going in the tree stand, going out in the garden, going to work. Like, I was with them all the time, right? And I learned a lot through those experiences. And I think that is one of these things where it's like, if we want the outdoor heritage and generation to thrive, it is up to us to bring people along, bring our kids with us and give those opportunities, bring our spouses with us and give them those opportunities. But then also look at bringing that friend, that coworker, that colleague, that individual who you've never seen pay any interest to the outdoors or hunting, but give them the opportunity to come along. So I promise you, I'm going to get into the story and how this ultimately goes. But I think it's powerful. Of like, there's a lot I learned on this trip about myself, and trying to like really articulate the overall message to this story. And the story behind this entire hunt is to bring them along, right? And I don't want that to get twisted. I had a great hunt, a great time. There are a lot of ups and downs throughout it, but there are a lot of unspoken heroes within the entire trip itself, right? And it's just a humbling thing. So we go, but at this point, we make the conscious decision that, yep, I'm going to go out hunting, got to get ready for it. Going to be traveling out mid-September. So we would have been leaving on the night of the 13th, that Friday, and then essentially being able to be out there until the 22nd, right? So, I mean, we had a good chunk of little time there, ultimately with my work schedule and everything being involved there. I had to work a full day on Friday and then got home, finished packing up some of the truck. We didn't leave until probably 11:30 at night, and then we drove straight through the night all the way out to Colorado. So drove part of Friday night, all day Saturday to get out there later that evening. So with that trip, you got to realize, like, and this is the stuff that you don't realize behind the scenes. Probably about 4 weeks prior to this, my truck's transmission went out. It had been in the shop for about 3 weeks at this point in time. So I had to get a rental truck. And with that rental truck, I had to go through and get the topper for this, right? To be able to close it in and make sure that I was able to get all the gear, the stuff for not only myself now, but also Tina and Aurora, because we made the decision that, and I just said, would you like to come along? And she's like, yes, if I can. I would like at that point in time, I'm like, yes, we are going to make it happen, right? And I'll get into how we ultimately did it here in a second. But Tina and Aurora came with on this hunt, or came with really on the trip itself, maybe not into the hunt itself, but they came along for the journey, and I would have had it no other way, right? But there were a lot of hoops and barriers and things we had to jump through to make this happen versus it just being me going out on a solo hunt, hanging out. So, and it just made it that much more meaningful and special throughout the entire piece. So, but we left that Friday night. I had gotten literally on Thursday, picked up the rental truck. Thursday night, I went through and found a $50 topper, an aluminum topper. So I'm back. It's reconnecting. Everything's coming up. So, but at literally Thursday night, found a $50 topper that I was able to put on the truck, Jimmy rigged the heck out of it, made it all connected up so it would seal, so we could take all of this stuff out on that trip. So packed the entire truck up. We headed out Friday night, drove straight through the night with a 10-month-old who was a little bit sick. She was not feeling great. She was teething, so she had snot like all over the place. I was not feeling good. I was definitely wore down and had a little bit of a flu bug or something going on. Tina in the kind of the same boat as I was, but we're going to make this trip. I was hell-bent on making this trip the best trip that it possibly could be and just making the most out of all of it. So drove all the way out there. What we did to accommodate in this piece and just accommodate for Tina and Aurora. Tina's never been on an elk hunt before. She's never gone out west hunting in any way, shape, or form. And of course, Aurora is 10. So she hasn't been hiking the mountains or anything as of yet. But what I did to make sure it was the best trip physically possible for them, especially driving a 2-wheel drive Dodge Ram half cab. So our car seat was shoved up in the middle of the 2 front seats, and Aurora was practically riding half in the front seat while we're cruising down the road. And this thing, I mean, cops really didn't bother it because it didn't look like we were causing any sort of trouble other than maybe some road violations from how the topper looked on the back of the truck. But we had the thing packed down, loaded to the hilt with the coolers, a bunch of different gear, family supplies, clothes, all different stuff was packed in there because there really wasn't much room in the back seat. We got out to Colorado, and what I had done is I got an Airbnb in Pagosa Springs. Cool little spot, honestly, very reasonably priced for the time that we were going to be out there. I personally was not going to be staying at the Airbnb a lot. The main reason for even having the Airbnb, the only reason that I had gotten it, was to accommodate to Aurora and Tina, and make sure that, Tina had the best experience possible. Because what we did is when we got to Colorado or Pagosa Springs, first thing we did was drive up to a trailhead, and I took that 2-wheel drive Dodge Ram street tires, regular height, no lift or anything, about a 2.5 hour drive up a single track trail that really only side by side should go. But we did get to the top of the mountain in that bad boy, turned around and made it all the way back. And I made sure that it had the full insurance on it. But I wanted Tina to kind of get a grasp of where I was going and ultimately where to be able to pick me up or drop me off and everything like that. So we did get back up in there before dark, and then we headed back out as well. Got out of that spot and then proceeded to drive into town, get Tina into the Airbnb, and get everything ultimately unloaded, set up that night. We got in late Saturday night, if I remember correctly, and everything unloaded. Along the ride, Aurora honestly did very, very well. Only being 10 months old, she fussed here and there, but she did sleep quite a bit just from being wore out and kind of sick, and being able to sit up in her car seat allowed her not to be super congested. So the drive wasn't bad, other than the 2 times that she projectile vomited all over her seat after we gave her some milk. There were many times, just little hiccups like that, diaper changes along the way, the things you don't really see, but it makes kind of for the story and the memories along the way, because it was in those heated moments, all you could do was laugh, because here you have this beautiful little 10-month-old girl who would projectile vomit all over the back seat, and then she'd proceed to just smile and kind of laugh okay, we're good, right? And then you're just cheering her on. And we're at, and one of them was literally driving through a mountain pass. And we're at that point, we're going through Wolf Creek Pass, and we had to pull over to the side of the road as semis and everything come on, because she had just puked everywhere, and get her changed out, tailgate down, changing out this baby on the side of the road. So there were fun hiccups and experiences the whole way out there. But we got there, got everything unloaded, and I decided to stay that night just to be able to decompress, not get super drained. Just drove straight through the night and just was, tired and exhausted. I think that was a good call overall. Sometimes I'll get there and I'll just jump right into it. You just get there so I can have a base and then ultimately wake up. But what we did then is I just got up the next morning, not super, super crazy early, because at that time, we weren't going to have a ton of time. I was like, hey, I'm just going to take really that Sunday to get everything prepped, make sure I have everything, get everything situated, and then head up in that afternoon and get up to where I could be to where I wanted to glass midday, and then make the deciding call on, whether I'm staying there, pulling out, just kind of have an idea of what's moving, talking, all that stuff. So, and just kind of packed up in so it was some good weather that I had. So packed up, did exactly that the next day, left Aurora and Tina there. Actually, Tina and Aurora went through and dropped me off at the mountain, and then they headed back into town to go do their thing. And just kind of Tina just hung out with Aurora, spent the day there, went around town, that kind of stuff. And then they dropped me off and I headed up in. So I was up there first day. As I'm walking away from Tina and Aurora, they head out. I get into the mountain about, at this point, maybe 50 minutes into my hike back up in, and I have a Raghorn 5x5 and 3 cows literally come 80 yards right in front of me, cross the trail right in front, came in silent. And I was like, of course. Like, and at this point, like, I love being able to chase big bulls, but I know I have a finite amount of time to be able to make this happen. If I had anything of decent caliber coming in front of me and it was a legal size bull, it was going down, right? So, of course, this bull, legal size, everything, good, like littler, 5 point. And the cows really weren't spooked or anything. They just trotted right in front of me. And I was like, this is one, a really good sign or a really bad sign, right? On how things are ultimately going to go. Because where I was hunting at that point, I was using a zone I couldn't hunt in to cross into another one. It's a little bit of a shortcut to get to the backside of another zone. So I had to go through that one to get to the other area. And the area I was walking through, and the funny piece to this is that zone is actually just, at that point, was just over the counter. The zone I drew was on the backside of this mountain, and I could have shot that bull if it would have been an over the counter scenario. But it's funny how everything happens and it all works out. But watch that bull a little bit, passed by, continued up the mountain, going further and further and further back up in, and then eventually getting to the top of the mountain. And that's at about a little over 11,000 feet. So I am hunting at a fairly high altitude, really up on the top of the Continental Divide. So got up on top of there, beautiful glassing area. It's one of my favorite spots out there. And I mean, there's many different spots, but it's just, you can see literally forever. And it's a beautiful area. There's a hidden lake and a couple different lakes and meadows down the other side. And so worked this ridge, worked the Continental Divide down around, getting to a point where I wanted to be able to go and where I know I've had history with animals in the past, and just be able to set up for that afternoon to be able to just go in silent and just kind of see what plays out for the afternoon. This is all day one, right? And getting in here. Well, I got over to where I was at, got up to the ridge, ended up just waiting and hearing one lone bull let a rip go. And I tried to go through, pulled out my Vortex spotting scope and tripod, got it all set up. I was trying to go through and film stuff, camera stuff. Like, I was really trying to self-film this entire trip. And there's different clips and things I have that I'm trying to put together for literally like a kind of a short film piece to it on YouTube. But I was trying to get all this stuff set up. And as I was setting that up, again, I had another bull rip right down, essentially below me, probably about, I say right below me, but it was probably about 600-ish yards away, but closer than the one who had just called, answering that. And I saw him move out on this finger. And right as that happened, I just got the spotting scope set up, the camera, I was able to pull it in, and I got a glimpse of him, and he was a giant. He was good. He was big. I was definitely game for everything that was about to go down, but he had a hot cow and he was chasing her all over God's green earth, going up and down, making all sorts of different things happen. But he had like his domain. And as he was going off, that other bull bugled, and literally the entire evening just erupted. I had 5 different bulls bugling around me, some on the side that I couldn't hunt, and then of course down on the side that I could hunt. And really, I was just game planning, like, how am I going to play all of this out? Because now it's getting later into the evening. Thermals are going to be dropping. There's really no way to work in on this bull without having the potential of him busting me. So what I opted to do in this is I went through, decided to go and call it a night. I essentially just watched him play with the cow and push her around. I couldn't find any others. It was just him and one cow from what I could tell. I'm sure there's others that were maybe in the timber. But at this point, the kicker to all of it was I had another bull that was working up on me, literally on the side that I couldn't hunt. And I'm like, man, if he could come up and get up to me, and I couldn't tell if it was the same bull that passed me a little bit before, but maybe I could just get him over enough on the line, right, between the two zones that are ultimately there. And I was, on Onyx, looking at, the mapping and trying to zone really far into it. Like, where do I need to be? Where does he need to be to make everything legal and just be, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and making sure everything's on par with that. So literally playing that kind of that line piece there to be able to have that bull over there. But I knew like the zone I was at, the place that I had drawn, like there is definitely animals happening here. So it got dark, time passed by. I ended up, there was a fire tower that I was up by, and I ended up just bivouacking it underneath the side of this thing. It wasn't supposed to get super, super cold. It wasn't supposed to rain, but I kind of dug myself right into the side of this thing. They had some old material and everything up there. So I actually pulled like a piece of plywood that I found on the side of this. That was kind of part of the build as they built this tower, and just kind of made it to where I could sleep there through the night. Literally just hung out, had my last light kind of rope lights. I got to tell you, if you guys don't have a last light rope light, I know this is like a little plug, but Last Light did a phenomenal job with creating that rope light, and it just makes a little beacon of where you're at, and it literally, you can see everything like that you have there. So I sat there, pulled that out, had a little Jetboil, made a little meal, and I literally just listened to bulls bugle all night long. And I essentially got ready for one of the longest nights of my life, because the bulls bugled literally throughout the entire night. After I had had my little dinner and everything like that, I'd kind of turned my lights off, said goodnight to Tina as we were messaging back and forth, letting her know that I was going to be staying on the mountain. And then I just listened to literally some of the coolest, greatest sounds and orchestra I've personally ever heard. And I've been in a lot of great scenarios, but there was a lot of emotions and a lot of things ultimately running through my head at that point in time. And it was really at that point where it's like, you know what? I was just very thankful for the opportunity to be where I was. I was very thankful for a wife who had given me the ability to do this, for a wife that would watch our daughter and travel all the way across God's green earth to support me in that and give me the opportunity to be able to provide for our family, and not in the sense like, yeah, I could go to a grocery store, but do it in the most raw, primal, primitive way possible, and chasing these magnificent animals with a bow and arrow. And there was just a lot of really strong points of gratitude through that entire evening. And it was, I did not really get any sleep at all, but ended up passing out a little bit, got up the next morning, and it was quite quiet. Got socked in, or had fog move in, so I could not see anything that was down below me. Heard one lone bugle, but the last thing I wanted to do, especially with the clouds being in and the fog and all that, I did not want to move in on a bull where I knew that really all the thermals early on like that were just traveling down. And I knew that bull was there. I knew that was his domain. I had been there before. My brother and I, years prior, had gone down and chased. And I would put money on the fact that that was the same bull my brother and I had seen a couple years prior. And I knew there were other bulls around. And of course, they're at this elevation. Everyone else was telling me to get down to 8,000 feet. This is where all the animals are, all the bulls are. And I would say, not to jump forward, but I shot my bull at about 10,005. And all these animals were around there. So really at the end of the day, it's like, go where people are not. You're bound to find elk. And that's just something my dad taught me. And I really lived by my entire life, hunting and everything I've ever done. This is the first draw unit tag I've ever gotten. And prior to this, 3 years prior, was over the counter. And everything was ultimately over the counter. Never done any other draw hunts out there. It's always been over the counter. So even when I was in Idaho, always over the counter. That next day was not as hot. Things had died off. Weather had started to move in. And I hung out for a while, hoping that, the fog would clear out so I could kind of get a pinpoint or an eye on some animals, but it just did not happen. And by midday, when I thought, most things would lift out, it was still fogged in. And I had to make kind of the conscious play of like, okay, what do I do now, right? Do I head down? Because I really, I didn't bring the stuff needed to stay out another night. I knew weather was going to be moving in. I didn't bring enough to, I didn't bring like an actual full tent or anything like that. I just wanted to be able to get up there for a day, see what was happening, make it happen. So I held out on the weather as much as I could, worked the ridge, tried to get some things to talk. But again, the weather just made it really just unsuccessful in the hunt itself, and nothing was talking. So at that point in time, this would have been on Sunday. I believe that would have been, yeah, Sunday morning there. That would have been Monday. Sunday I got up in there. That would have been Monday. Tuesday I decided to go through, or that Monday I decided to go down, went with went with down to see Tina, spent the night at the Airbnb Monday night. Tuesday went back up in to another zone, tried something a little bit lower, tried to get into where some elk were, went up, got into elk, got really, really close. Another bull, I've switched to a completely different area because it's like, I know there's a bull there, and that's going to be like my last resort to just Hail Mary and get in on this stud, because I knew some nicer weather was coming in later in the evening, and I didn't want to try and just bust into it with poor weather, with how things were ultimately looking, wind, all that kind of stuff, and just where stuff was at. So it's like, if I am going to be out there, and I will be damned if I'm not going to be out there, I wanted to make sure that I was using my time wisely. So, and I think that's something for a lot of you guys, if you've never hunted, like out west, we have such a luxury now having things like Onyx, looking at Onyx, Deercast, Spartan Forge, Huntwise, like all these apps that are out there, regardless of what you use, like they're a phenomenal tool to be able to utilize, right? And especially now with just the mapping details and everything that are taking place, but then also the weather, right? And seeing what's going on, because really animals are no different than you. Like they're going to, really play to the weather, and they're going to, do what is best for them in different scenarios, whether that's hunkering down or getting out and moving. If you don't like moving in it, they don't like moving in it either. They will, more so than you, most likely, but it's not necessarily the best case scenario in those different areas. So I played on that for Tuesday, went up, worked another area, spent an entire day in another zone, got in on some elk, but I found out that it was super close to some private land. I was trying to play this private land spot where it's like, again, e-scouting. I could tell that there was a private chunk, and I just had a gut feeling that there were going to be elk in that area. And if I could get back in here where most people are not willing to go, right, and go far in, I'm going to get in on elk, because it is a long haul to get back, and it's all landlocked by private land. So got in there, just was not in far enough at the point in time to get on some elk. I did make a move on a bull literally right before dusk, and we were working each other back and forth, and I thought it was going to happen, and I think he really, really wanted it. But by the time we got close enough and I could actually hear him moving and coming, it was already too dark to be able to go through and make any sort of play at that time. So from there, the next day, I ended up going in to the same spot and tried to work another ridge to go around. So it was a little bit lower elevation, but I kind of figured out the terrain. It was a spot I hadn't been before. There was more water, and just trying to get some things played out, but it did not ultimately happen for that time overall. So the next day, though, after that, I spent an entire day with Tina and Aurora. The weather was getting nicer. The storms had passed. I came down and spent the day with Tina and Aurora in town. It was probably one of the nicest days that we had throughout the entire week trip. And it honestly, I had to swallow a lot of my own pride and ego. And it was hard, I'm not going to lie, to go out on this trip and have spent so much time and money and resources, everything into it. But I'll say probably single-handedly one of the best things I did was go through and take that time with Tina and Aurora for that day. We went on a hiked up to a waterfall just outside of Pagosa Springs, had Aurora on my back. She's only 10.5 months old at this point in time. We got a little video of her crossing a bridge and everything, and it's kind of those memoir things that, as she ages, we want to be able to do these things together and watch her grow and just age throughout all of it and have these experiences. So that was a phenomenal time. It ate at me quite a bit because, of course, while I was there, I was thinking about how nice it is, and I should be up on the mountain to go make these things happen. But, I don't regret it whatsoever. So, and I do have to back up, because that would have been on Wednesday. That would have been, yep, I believe that would have been Wednesday. So really that Tuesday, I spent the morning and the afternoon in that one spot. I didn't go back. But Wednesday was that day. I now had a decision to make because I knew I had to go do essentially a Hail Mary to make some things happen because I only have so much time and we have to leave no later than Saturday to be able to get back home with work and everything starting on Monday. Just with the time and travel, we got to be out of here at a certain period of time. So that being said, went through and ended up going up, having Tina drop me off or drove me up to the mountain pass and everything up to a spot where I was going to go in. And I was just, the whole drive there, I had something telling me, don't go where you want. Because I was going back to go after that big bull back further in and everything. But knowing what I know and how long for me to go through and have harvest that bull and where he was, everything would have to happen perfectly. And then it would have taken me another 2 days to pack him out. And I'm just going through this head and it's like, I can do it. Like I'll fucking make this shit happen. But it would have taken a lot longer to go through and get that bull out, right? And there was just something nagging at me that it just wasn't right. And I had this gut feeling. And I was looking at Onyx as I was traveling out, and I just had Tina go through. And as we were driving up there, I was like, hey, stop. And she pulled over to the road. I was like, man, I just don't know. She like, stop. And she's like she's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, no, just keep going. Because I fought it a little bit. I said, hey, just keep going. We got further and further. And I was looking at Onyx and I'm like, I need you to just take me here. I said, turn around, go back, drop me off here, right on the side of the road. I'm going. That's what we did. Drove back. She literally dropped me off on the side of the highway and I hiked in and went for a day trip. And this is the big thing. Like, you guys have to realize, like, elk are going to be where people are not. Right now, you'll get the people that are like, well, I'm down in, XYZ town and city, and look at, they're all around. They're walking around here. They are also domesticated in the sense they know that they are safe in those different areas and zones. It's no different than a herd of elk, having tons of public land around it, and then they're on that one little sliver of private, right, that you're not able to get to them on, right? And they'll just hang out right there because they know that they are safe, right? And they'll find all these nooks and crannies, these little, indentations and topography of land, and get deep down in there and just go where, you could look at it, whether it's from town or a road, and it's like, elk wouldn't be there. It's like, I guarantee you that there have been elk if there are not elk right there right now. And they're just there throughout all of it. They're a tremendously resilient animal, and they have adapted. Of course, like, most people don't know that elk are a plains animal. Like, they were known to be just out roaming all the plains. And because of, Western evolution and just moving into territory and pushing them out and all these things happening, like, it pushed them into the mountains. It made them resilient. And that just evolution is a phenomenal thing to watch. And just, I've seen these animals at, 800, 1,000 pounds go through and maneuver themselves through some of the craziest terrain known to man. So that's why I just kind of picked this spot. Like, from the naked eye, it's like most people would look at that and be like, hell no, not gonna go. And that is, for me, I am a firm believer of the fastest way between 2 points is a straight line. Yes, I will use a switchback method time to time here and there. And I've been known to get myself into some different sticky situations. Another reason why sometimes I like to hunt alone, because it's like I'll put myself into those situations versus other people. But it's always good to have a buddy, because did have some things happen along this trip that I am thankful that I am still here. That's just always the case when doing anything solo. Like, Mother Nature, the mountain does not care. The mountain doesn't care. Mother Nature doesn't care. Like, if you treat it poorly, it will humble you super quick. So got up, went in, I got into this pocket, this chute going up the mountain. And from where you look, it doesn't look like very much. It just looks like things get cliffed out, and it looks super steep. As I moved up further and further back, it plateaued. And that's what I kind of predicted, was the fact that it was probably going to plateau in these different little shelves, kind of creating these little oases. And that's exactly what it did. Got in no more than maybe a couple 100 yards, and I was surrounded by mule deer. I had couple little bucks, couple does, and they had no idea that I was there. And I was using a little crick system. And this is something for those of you guys, like, especially if you're newer to hunting or Western hunting, like the air, and it's called thermals, right? But in the morning, when the air is cold, right, thermals are coming down. So the air is dropping down through those valleys within the mountains. And then also, that's very early in the morning, and also later in the evening, thermals there. But as you are going up the mountain, and this is where you have to play with those thermals, as the sun rises, once the sun gets up and that sun hits that side of the mountain where you're at, the thermals start to rise, right? So you have to always check your wind and where those thermals are playing. And sometimes they'll swirl, and you'll get into different, saddles and scenarios where you have to really be aware of your wind, because that is something that will bust you all the time, no matter what. So, but a trick you can do, and something I like to do, is if you find a little creek or a stream, you can go through and work that stream up through the mountain basin, because the air around the creek, the water is cold, right? So the air by that stream, and you can do this in the Midwest with whitetails and everything. Like if you are close to water and you do your little, whether you use the milkweed or you use your little baby powder or whatever you're doing to check wind, your wind checker, you do that close to water, 9 times out of 10, that air is going to drop towards the water, because the water is cool, and ultimately the air is going to fall down to that. So to be able to disguise your scent and to be able to really control your scent, you can utilize those channels of water, right, and those streams to ultimately work your way up. And normally streams are a little bit louder, they're running, they're crashing, things of that nature, so it'll cover up your sound as well. So I took this little stream and really followed this entire stream all the way up the mountain, got about halfway up to where I wanted to be, and ultimately came head to head with a bull. Couple 100 yards away in a dark timber across a meadow, and we were just playing each other back and forth. I had called, he called back, and we were just going back and forth, but he would not move. And I should have known better, but I was, of course, just in a rush, and I rushed the process. I'm like, well, he's not going to have scent. Like the thermals right now equal with him, so they're gonna rise, and I'm able to work really parallel with him, so it should not have any problem with scent or anything of that nature. So I started to make a move in on him, calling, working back and forth and making things happen, but he wouldn't move. And what I should have known, and I should have looked more, I should have glassed more, taken more time, but he had about 6 to 7 cows with him that were hung up in that dark timber and everything that he was in. And those cows are like watchdogs. Like they're all around him. Like you'll have a bull. He was, of course, a herd bull. I only got like a quick glimpse of him as he ultimately busted through the timber and everything. But the cows had busted me as I was moving in. And then he, of course, followed his cows, and everything went dead silent with those guys. So unfortunate event overall, but lesson learned. You always just got to be aware. Like if you got a bull, like, yes, there's a chance that it is, a satellite bull or a lone bull, especially in those kind of scenarios, but got to take your time. I rushed the process, and that's ultimately the result of rushing that process. So from there, decided to work around there, where this valley that I was ultimately in, there was another one around the mountain on the other side of this, like the back side of this mountain I was on. There was another chute that was ultimately going in, got cliffed out and different things, and it looked very similar to the one that I was in. So I went through and worked this entire mountain face all the way around. It was very, very steep as I got out towards the ledge. Almost got cliffed out a couple times as I was moving, but found kind of this rock garden up in there, and then found a really, really cool spot, because there's a lot of avalanche spots that come down through here. So there's a lot of fallen timber and just trees overall. And it's like a freaking hurdle session no matter what. You're just going up and down, up and down. But if you have good balance and packs loaded right and all sorts of different things, like you can get up on this log and you can just run it one way and just literally walk like just a balance beam nonstop, weaving back and forth all the way across this mountain. And there was a cool spot where I was able to do that for quite a ways. And then because I was able to move so silently with doing that, I came right up in on probably one of the largest mule deer I had ever seen. And this buck was huge. And I've seen a lot of mule deer before, but like on the hoof, this is the largest one that I had ultimately seen personally. And it made me really regret not getting a mule deer tag in that scenario. And I went through, ranged him. He was about like 70-ish yards. He was a little bit further first off, and then I was able to move in again silently using those trees to go. I'm about 70 yards, and he just stood there perfectly broadside, just looking back at me. And it could have been a phenomenal take and harvest at that point. But I just watched him for a little bit, appreciated, really again, where I was at that moment. I just kind of sat down, had a little bit of a snack, refueled, energized, got some water from a little stream that I was at, and then worked myself around the rest of that face. And when I got to the other side, the mountain on the face I was on was definitely like, it was a lot more open than I thought it was going to be. It wasn't nearly as wooded or didn't have nearly as much timber as I thought it would, but to where the dark timber side, that side had a lot more timber on it. My side was much more barren, had little small pine trees, different scrub brush and that. But I found a spot where really it was, the sun, just kind of beating down on it. And I literally found this perfect little spot. Nothing was talking, and my whole move in moving into this valley was, I'm not going to say a word. I'm not going to call. I'm not going to do anything. It's midday. I'm just going to wait to see if anything chirps up and starts talking, and really just kind of play it all out. I'll do some glassing, see if I can see anything. I move because there wasn't as much dark timber, so I was able to glass and do those things more. So with that being said, I fell asleep probably for a couple hours right there, just passed right out. And when I woke up to this little mule deer doe that literally had walked up maybe 10 yards from me. And that's really what woke me up, is she just kind of like made a sound, noise, little rustle. And I woke up and looked over, and there she was just staring at me 10 yards away. Probably like, what the heck is this weird animal doing laying in on this log? Because I was just like perched in and just sitting there perfectly. It was the best nap ever. But she kind of jumped off, went and did her thing. And then at the same time, as I'm looking up, I look down into the meadow, and down below me, I now have this calf cow, right? So a yearling cow elk is just down in the meadow. I believe when I ranged her, she was like 137 yards away. So not super, super far. But at that point I was like, okay, I need to make sure that I am concealed and I'm not just out in the sun at this point in time, because there is elk here. Like, they are definitely here. If there is one, there is probably gonna be more, whether or not there is a good mature bull and it's not just a calf cow kind of scenario. But I got myself into a little bit of timber, a couple little trees that were there. And then just as soon as I ultimately did that, I had a bull just bugle off up into the canyon that was further up into the mountain. And at that point I was like, okay, like I gotta try and find him. I'm going to be quiet. And then he bugled again. And it was just like one after another. He was almost worked up. So I was able to get my binos out, take the binos out of my holster and bring them up. I look up, and at this point in time, I'm looking in the dark side of the mountain, and I finally pick him out. He is up there, mature, at this point at the distance, I was like, all right, he's a decent bull. Did not know the caliber and or size that he ultimately was, really, just because I was like, all right, bull. And then I just started glassing for cows because I didn't want to make the same mistake that I had made earlier, right? So at this point, of course, being that it is, really down to the last wire, I had only so much time to go through and make things happen. It is a little later in the afternoon. I know that the sun is going to go down once it goes behind that mountain. I could move, but will I be able to get over there soon enough? And this is where I firmly believe, like, my physical fitness, health, just overall ability, right, to move is a big reason why I was able to capitalize on this bull. Because as I watched him, and I watched his cows. He had, I believe it was 8 cows that were just like watchdogs. And there was this one that I swear literally stood on the cliff and just looked over, and I swear she was looking right at me. I mean, as the crow flies straight across about 700 yards away, and she's just staring right through my soul. As I'm looking through the binos and I'm looking at her, it's like she's looking right through the glass into my soul, and just standing on the top of this mountain, not moving an inch. Meanwhile, I get a better glimpse of this bull, and I'm like, man, he's a nice bull. Like, he is very good size. I caught him raking a tree. He had one cow, and the reason he was so worked up, he had one cow that was just not following the rules, was not falling in line, and he was chasing her all up and down. He would rake the tree, chase her, push her down the mountain. She'd run down, he'd get her and push her back up into the herd. Like, he was just running all over God's green earth, trying to go through and control this one gal. And he was running him all over the place. I had a decision to make. I either back out and attempt to come up on the other side of the mountain the next day and work over in on them, or as soon as that sun goes behind the mountain behind them, I grab all my stuff and I haul ass around my mountain face down through a deep kind of ravine valley, hopefully not getting like cliffed out where this, because I could hear the river that was running down through this, and he's on the other side of it. Say river, stream, whatever it was, I could hear it roaring right from where I was. So I'm like, okay, there's a waterfall or something over there, which is great for noise like control and everything. But I don't know how steep it is getting further into this ravine and everything that we're in. Because, I mean, you can only tell so much until you're right in it. How far you have to travel down to get around, to maneuver up, or how much further you have to go up to maneuver over. So it was one or the other. I either pull out and like come back in the next day knowing that there's elk here, have, camp out, or there's really 3 choices in it. It was kind of, I looked at it as 2 because I want to be able to spend time with Tina and Aurora and do that kind of stuff, and just kind of the time that I had. I could have stayed on the mountain. I could have camped out, but I don't think that would have been advantageous to where I was at and just the setup that I had. I think I would have had more ability to push them out than to be there, but that was an option. But when all was said and done, as soon as that sun dropped behind, I just kind of got a better, because it wasn't blinding me, I got a better lay of the land. And it was just like an internal thought that came into my mind, is like, let's go. Like, you got to go for broke. Make this shit happen. You've done it your entire life. You know how these animals handle. You know how they work. Like, like all the scenarios, the thermals, the light, the topography, all the layout, everything. He is controlled by this one female on the other side and this cow on the other side. Like, you have the ability to make a move here, and where all the cows were further out to the left of him, and I'd be coming in on the right. So the scenarios all panned out, and in that instance, I was just like, you just got to go make it happen. So I got my pack on, locked it all down. The thing that I wish I would have done, and I'm just, this is lesson learned, is like, I took my GoPro off. I had it on my head, but I was afraid with moving, if any bit of sunlight or something glared, I was afraid that a glare would ultimately catch them and ultimately spook. So because everything happened so fast, I was not able to get the kill shot on film through it because I had taken the GoPro off of my head. And anyone who's elk hunted before, when it is time to go, it is time to go. It is days upon days of buildup to 30 seconds. And that's really how it happened. Was not able to get the film on that, but that was the whole scenario that ultimately happened. I just took that off. I wanted to make sure that there was no chance of, while I'm going across this meadow, glare or any of that kind of stuff. And knowing, like, on the lens, I have the glass in the front of it, I was afraid that might catch a little bit of something. If that's true or not, I don't know, but that's my thought at the moment. So, but I hauled my ass across this mountain, going from tree to tree to tree to tree, really just keeping an eye on him, paralleling that entire herd all the way across. I got back down into a ravine, came up out of that ravine, and then dropped right down into this creek bottom. It sounded like a river from where it was, but there was a waterfall. it was probably a stream that was maybe 5 feet wide, and it was good and loud, right? And I love that. I love just a loud stream that's roaring, but it's also very, very cool in that little funnel and that chute. So I know all my thermals are going down right there, and I'm literally parallel with him. So everything with that is being sucked down to that water, so I can use this to my advantage. I come up out of that ravine, get up onto a little flat plateau, and now at this moment, I'm a few hundred yards from where I had last seen him. Got up into this spot, and I came up to this tree that was down. Like, I got up onto a little plateau, like it's flat, little rock face, and there's a tree about 1.5 feet diameter coming right up next to me, and then like these other trees kind of fell into it. So it's kind of like, it created this little bunker piece for me. And at this moment, I didn't know exactly where he was, right? And I had there was another little stream, little trickle stream kind of right down in front of me, and some other timber across the way. And all I did at this moment, and I really it was just like an instinctual thing. It wasn't really thought out, other than like, I am now where I am. I'm like, I am just going to let one little cow call go and then just shut up and see if this brings him this way, because it is a cow coming into his bedroom, essentially his domain. I've done this a bunch of times back when I got it out in Idaho. And it's like, if you can get in their zone and just even a little call, like you are not supposed to be there, right? And they're going to check it out, especially, or they're going to try and figure it out. But no matter what, with that call, like even if he came down below, I would have had a shot. I did that cow call. Within a matter of not even 5 seconds, that cow that he was chasing, I cow called, and literally I just heard rocks crashing. And that cow that he had been chasing literally came up probably not even 10 feet in front of me, right around the rock face. I'm surprised she didn't go through and wind me, because she was literally below me, came up this rock face on a dead run, right across in front of me, to where I could have thrown my bow and hit her right off the little ledge. She came around me, and then he let out a bugle that was just the most perfect, like picturesque movie bugle. Hey, I know where you are. I'm gonna kill you kind of bugle. Like, he was pissed. He was mad, and all I heard was rock shale starting to come down the mountain, and I knew he was on his way. So there was a spot 63 yards across the stream right out in front of me. And I don't know why, but I dialed my Arxos dial out to that 68. I ranged it there, and I drew back, and I'm like, he's going to come right there. And he did. He came at a perfect 68 yards and stood broadside right there. I don't know why, but I let him pass, because he stopped for a second and then went. And I'm like, he's going to present another shot at a much closer spot. And I don't know why. I had this, like, it was just an instinctual thing that just took over. He went past. I let my bow down, which is crazy, that I drew back, didn't take the shot, let down, and I'd dialed, because everything was happening. This is happening in matters of seconds. He came right down. I'm like, he's going to come right across where she came. Like, right down, literally, he's going to come, if not 10 yards from me. So as he came across, I dialed my sight back to, I ranged like a little log where he would have had to come around. And it was at like 31 yards, if I remember correctly. And I dialed that sight right to 30 really quick. It's nice because it's just got big types, like the sight tape on there is just nice and big, so you're able to see it really, really quick. And as soon as he came across the creek, I tried to get him to stop, and he slowed down, but he didn't stop. And at that time where he came right across, I let an arrow fly and just smoked him a little bit further back than I would like, right? Because he did not fully stop in it, but went through, hit him in a good shot, probably single lung, a little bit further back, like I said. But he went forward about 10 yards, had no idea that I'm here. No idea at all. And this is the rule to always follow. If they are in sight and you have arrows in your quiver, empty your arrows. And that is exactly what I did. I went through, took the next arrow in, evolution broadheads on us. These things freaking rip. I locked that arrow in. I took another range of a log. I knew he was standing right behind a tree at about 32 yards. I ranged a log. I'm like, he's going to turn around, because this is another rule. Like, whenever an animal gets wounded, or not wounded, but like hurt, and they're in pain or anything of that nature, not even just pain, like they've been hit, they go back to like a safe zone, right? That bull had no idea what is going on. That bull has been in fights. He has gone through hell or high water, and he has no idea that he had just been shot with an arrow. Passed right through. He turned around, went right back where I thought he was going to go, about 42 yards. At this point, went through. He stopped right at a log, because that log stopped him from moving forward. He had to either go up or down. Stopped right there. Boom. Another arrow right in the pump house. That one was really the I would say the ultimate kill shot to it. Took out another arrow on him. Went out, did a quick turned the dial, really just in increments. I put it up to about 55 yards. I did a quick range. Was at 60, aimed a little higher. As he's heading up the mountain at a quartering away, boom, smoked him again. Essentially front shoulder. It went straight through, which I got to give, to the victory arrows and the evolution broadheads. That stuff ripped. Went straight through shoulder, hit him low. So it was kind of like lower, I'd say front lower shoulder, busted straight through him in a pass through, went right into the log that was right behind him. I ended up retrieving that arrow afterwards, taking my Montana company knife, and essentially whittling that broadhead out. I still have it here on my arrow at home, because that was an arrow that I found afterwards that I requivered to be able to utilize again if need be. But then the final shot was, he was at 80. I ranged at 86 yards. I dialed the thing all the way out to 90 and let one last final shot go with the good old Texas hard shot, and plugged him there. He went about 15 yards forward and just stopped, and then laid down, and then that's where he expired. Ultimately, I encourage you to go through and watch the Instagram highlights for the 2024 elk hunt. In there, I go through I document the whole story via Instagram stories, and just with Aurora, Tina, everything throughout. But that is the moment where really right after that, as he had just laid down, I took a video of me, because everything happened so quick. I didn't have time to react to anything that was going on, other than afterwards, all the adrenaline started pumping in, and ultimately my body was shaking. Could not believe what had ultimately just transpired. And there was a lot of emotions that ultimately came overwhelming in that moment. And as my dad has always said, and as I always hear him in the back of my head, it's all fun and games until you put one down. That's when the real work begins. That's when the real men are tested. And at that moment, after I was able to go lay hands on that animal, I, of course, tried to go through. I actually had one bar of service up on the top. I was able to call Tina and talk with her and let her know what was going on, and let her know that I would be going through in Messenger that, hey, as soon as I get things quartered up and done, get my first load to go, I'll let her know. So we had a little bit of a celebration and everything with that after the bull had expired, and try to call a couple different friends, let them know what ultimately had gone on. Sent my dad a text and everything, just let him know what ultimately was going on. And of course, he had text back. He's like, son of a bitch, I knew I should have gone. And there's much more of a story and everything behind that, because normally dad is the one who is coming along in the main, the cohort and all of it. So he taught me everything I know. And I ultimately love being able to share those experiences with him. So I had to let him know. But then, just as dad had said, it's when the real work begins. And now I have, this massive animal in the side of the mountain, and I'm a few hours back up in some steep terrain, but better yet, there is a lot of down timber to get out of here from previous avalanches and things that had gone through, trees that have fallen over down through this valley and this ravine. So I had a lot of work cut out ahead of me. After I got to give a huge shout out. I got to the animal, and this is one thing, you don't realize how big they are until you're right there and you're the only one trying to go through and maneuver this animal. Another reason to be fit, healthy and in shape. It took every ounce of me to be able to articulate that animal on the side of the mountain, to orientate it well enough to where I could go through and actually quarter that animal up. A couple things I highly recommend. Definitely a sharp knife. I cannot speak highly enough of the Montana Knife Company knives. I had my speed goat and everything with me, and I quartered that entire animal up with my Montana Knife Company speed goat knife, and it's done wonders within it. So I believe in a sharp knife. That's something I always say is like a sharp knife is always safer than a dull knife. There's nothing worse than going through and injuring yourself in the backcountry, and majority of most knife injuries are going to happen because of a dull knife. It's just usually the case. You're trying too hard. You're trying to maneuver things, make stuff happen. I have hurt myself, I know in my own experience, more times with a dull blade than with an actual sharp blade. So a good sharp knife is very, very beneficial. Highly, highly, highly recommend the Last Light rope lights. That was where I was able to get that cool picture, of course, after the harvest, and it was dark at night. But their rope lights are phenomenal. And I actually just went through and I can actually open this up, kind of go through. I got a new battery pack from them with the light on it. So the coolest piece with the Last Light solar power bank is that this power bank is fully solar. You can utilize it on the backpack. It charges and holds a charge for a phenomenally long amount of time. It held that light on for the entire time I was quartering that animal. It also charged my phone. It also charged one of my GoPros. So this power bank they have is awesome. It also will go through and wirelessly charge your cell phone as well. I did not know that until later, after all, but super cool tool overall to be able to use. Those rope lights, whether you're in camp, we used them at deer camp, but that's something I highly recommend. Knife, a light, good game bags. That's something I will be investing in even going this year. I just utilize the antimicrobial ones, which they worked great overall, but ones that have like a rope or something to be able to tie them in a tree is going to be very big. And then the last thing is you can never have enough rope. Whether I would say just, a paracord, something that is going to allow you to utilize it to not only tie something to your pack, right, but also be able to hang different stuff in the trees or whatever you got to do. And then really something that a lot of people don't think about, especially when they're newer, is you want to have enough rope to where if you were hunting alone and you're having to quarter this animal up, to where you could tie that leg off and pull it over to a tree and ultimately have that act as a third arm for you, especially if you don't have someone else there. So highly recommend knife, the light, right? You can never have enough light, power bank, those rope lights, and then having that rope, of course, with you. And then outside of that, might as well just go right into it. Guys, I can't speak highly enough about, and this is like a pack that I've worn a good handful of other packs and ones that have just made my shoulders. I've done a lot of rucking. I've done a lot of work with, vests and all that stuff. The Initial Ascent pack is a phenomenal tool. It takes so much weight off of your shoulders, putting it onto your hip and your trunk, and actually allowing you to utilize the big muscle movers that you have, making that weight more stable and removing a lot of that extra strain from your lower back that usually happens when you're having to lean forward and just put a lot more load in places it doesn't need to be. So definitely something to look at there when you're looking at different gear and just making sure you're getting the most out of that, right? Other little things, other packs I ultimately use, definitely something I'll want to do for next year, just because I was running so much with cameras and different electronics that I had. The Dark Energy, I have their power bank as well, and that is an awesome little power bank. It's a smaller power bank, the Poseidon, but it is still a phenomenal tool that charged my phone multiple times. It's lighter than the Last Light one, as much as I love the Last Light one, and just the quality of that unit as a whole. Definitely Dark Energy has some phenomenal stuff. Even their little light is a phenomenal tool as well. So a lot of different cool little things. I know Dark Energy has their solar panel. That is one thing that I will be going through and investing in to be able to have a bigger solar panel. to be able to have that on my pack, to be able to charge those different things, gain more of just a charging part, like when I am taking those mountain naps, to be able to do that. So, but here nor there, got everything cleaned up, going back into the story, because the story is not over. This is really where the real work begins. I went through, quartered the bull up, got it all done. And at that point, I was done at, would have been, I remember calling Tina or messaging Tina at about 11:30, if I remember correctly, and let her know that, hey, it's 11:30. I'm going to be starting to head down now. Should take me about maybe 2 hours to get down, right? So think about that. 11:30, 12:30, 1:30, good. Cool. And that was like thinking like, okay, a couple hours to get down. Cause it was just all down, but it was a lot of those down trees and downfall and everything in there. My first load, I loaded literally everything that I possibly could into that load. I quartered everything up, put it off to the sides. By the time I was down, and this is where I made the mistake, because I was like, okay, got everything quartered up, put off to the sides, packed, and my pack had literally all the different leftover meat, everything that was ultimately there. And from that point, I just loaded my pack way too heavy. We'll just put it at that. When I went down with my bow and everything on it, my pack, I weighed it out, all my gear, meat, bow, everything that was there was about 100. And that is a lot of weight to carry downhill. Everyone thinks uphill sucks, and it does, and it's not easy. But downhill, there's a lot of things that can ultimately go wrong. You don't realize how much of a toll it plays on your ankles. You don't realize what it's doing to your knees and everything that's ultimately going on, and it wreaks havoc on the body. And I ultimately went that heavy, just like, I was like, all right, well, I can do this. I can get it out. But the kicker that threw for me was, of course, the side hilling. Thank God, like I will say, Crispy Boots, shout out to them. Phenomenal boot that did really, really well through the entire piece. But just like anything over time and duration, like it wears on you, right? There's a lot of weight coming down on a side hill, but then the real kicker was all of the downfall that ultimately I had to hurdle over again and again and again. And there was at one point in time that I had gotten up on the log, and these trees are, 2.5, 3 feet in diameter, big trees, and they're all collapsed on top of each other, zigzagging back and forth. And it's like, man, if I could just walk these across these areas, I'll cut down time. Well, with my pack so heavy and just kind of odd load and everything to it, like it doesn't take like one little shift, and that much weight whips you right off of a tree. And I was heading down a hill, going slow. I slipped a little bit, caught myself, but we all know that little jerk that, throws our hips forward. We kind of hold ourselves, catch it, but then it's like everything kind of recorrects. And my pack over positioned, whipped me off of that log, which was probably about already 2.5 feet off the ground, down the mountain. And when I hit the mountain, of course, I had on the pack rack, all this different stuff. It took the complete wind out of me. And just knowing where I landed, it could have been a lot worse. It could have been very easily that I impaled myself with a log or a protruding branch that came out of one of these other logs. Something with the rack or tines on that could have very easily. At that point, of course, I had like chucked or kind of threw my bow off to the side, which I have to say, like, I beat the shit out of my bow, and the thing looks like it's brand new. It's friggin' Hoyt's built tough. We'll just say that. And the Hoyt, the rest, the sight, all the different stuff, like that thing went through hell and back, and we're still rocking and rolling. But definitely threw it off, but could have very easily, in poor scenarios, like arrow pop off, impale something, like it could have been really, really bad. And I, at that moment, like, I had to drop my ego. I really contemplated dropping weight. But I just had to tell myself to go slow and easy. Caught myself, of course. I was just talking to the big man upstairs and just asking him, please, let me get off this mountain safe. Let me get off it in one piece. I don't want my wife to have to try and come up here and haul my ass off. I don't want her to have to worry about me. Let me go through and complete this. I will get help if I can get down and get to that point. So to back up just a quick piece, as I was traveling out there, and this is just the power of First Form Outdoors, of the entire outdoor community, not just First Form, but just good people who love the sport of hunting, who I believe exemplify the outdoor brotherhood. And I can't say enough good things about these gentlemen, but I had a friend, Garrett, and Maurice, and really Maurice had reached out to me as I was heading out. He said, "Hey man, I see that you're heading out west. Gonna go get after them. Let me know if you go through and get one down. We'll be there to help you pack it out." And a lot of times people will say that, just kind of lip service and different things there. And last thing I want to do is like burden someone with, something like that, or, taking time out. Cause I know I'll go help and do different stuff, but I also don't, expect other people to take time out of their day to go through and help me in that area. Well, at that point, it was 1:30 in the morning. I shot Maurice a message, and ultimately said, "Hey dude, if you're able to, I know it's late or early in the morning, if you get this, let me know. I got a bull down and I could really use some help getting him out." And shot him that. I think it was a text that I went through, got him to, I think it was a voice text or text, I can't remember. But it was just me just dropping the ego. Hey, you got in, you made the solo hunt happen, regardless of if friggin' haters or whatnot want to say it wasn't a true solo hunt. Got in, got it done, got a load out, and then thank God for friends and individuals who truly exemplify what it means to be a sportsman and outdoorsman. Because those guys, the next day, I, of course, came down, got out, hauled my happy little ass out of the mountain. My wife saw me in some of the worst shape or condition that she's seen me in as far as physical appearance, in the sense of how I looked or felt at that time. I mean, I've done an Ironman, like a half Ironman. I've done a marathon. I've done some hellacious CrossFit workouts and competed a lot. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. And it tested every ounce of me. You could do any workout. That was the hardest thing I have ever done and or achieved, is hauling that load out of that mountain and going through all of that stuff. And I believe everything that I've done up until that point had been preparing me for that kind of moment. And that's a big reason why I wanted to be able to do it. But from that moment, we got it all loaded up. I didn't get out. And this is where Tina comes in to be the unsung hero of the entire trip. As she, of course, has been hanging out with, Aurora and all this stuff. When I told her that I was going to be heading out at 11:30, said I'll probably be down there, 1 o'clock, something like that. Tina waited on the side of the highway until almost 3:30 in the morning for me to come out of the mountain. It took me that much longer to get out after slowing everything down. But she waited there with Aurora, with a 10-month-old, on the side of the mountain for her husband to get out of the mountain to make sure that I was safe. And ultimately it caught in like a video of me walking out of the mountain and everything there. She never complained. She never gave me any grief or shit about it. She was just proud and happy to see me down there alive and successful. And she shared in my excitement and ultimately the journey as a whole. And I don't think I would have achieved getting that bull and achieving that hunt if everything didn't align. If Aurora wasn't there, if Tina wasn't there, if I wouldn't have gone to that position, like a lot of what happened in that entire trip and hunt would have never came to fruition if it wasn't for her and just the support overall, right? So I think of that to where it's like some of the coolest things that ultimately we could go through and do is if we bring people along and we help share those journeys and those experiences. Because I will say Tina definitely has a greater appreciation for what I do and what we do going out west now that she has ultimately been there, seen it, and really experienced part of it. So really cool to share that with her. Went down, got that first load out, but of course the next day I had to go back up in. And this is where it gets into Maurice and Garrett is that next day, got up, knew I had to go back up in because, of course, we had to be heading out really on that like Saturday afternoon. and everything. So Friday, we got up, kind of hung out a little bit, kind of licked my wounds, just beat to hell, sore as hell, like not in the greatest spot. But I didn't hear back from Maurice right off the bat on the text. So I just decided to give him a call. And I called him and he's like, hey, man, what's up? So definitely had not gotten the message that I'd sent. I said, hey, did you get the message? He's like, no, I guess I didn't see it. Who didn't get it. Of course, it was like 1:30 in the morning when I sent it. So I don't down him for any of that. But told him, I was like, hey man, I got a bull down and I was just wondering, like, I could use some help. He's like, how many people do you think? He's like, where is it? Like, where's it going? Like, it was not like, oh man, I can't. He's like, how many people do we need to get it out? I was like, I mean, you and like 2 others, and like the 4 of us, like we should be able to get it out, like everything in one go. Like, all right, sounds good. I'll be there in an hour. They live 45 minutes away in Durango. And about an hour and a half, they showed up and they got there. It was Maurice's son, and Garrett. All of these guys, I've never had the ability to hunt with them yet. They're someone I would love to share a campfire with on a mountainside with, but they are individuals that I met at the Mountain Archery Fest with Brandon Waddell. They are really his crew and just that team and that family and everything over there. And that's why I have to say such good things about Mountain Archery Fest and those guys taking care of each other. And they exemplify what it means to be a great outdoorsman. They exemplify what it means to be a good friend and honestly just a good human and showing up for someone they really don't know super, super well. And to watch, Maurice's son go through at 13 years old, kid's a tank, and carry out a full elk quarter, and to watch him go back and forth and banter with Garrett, just the camaraderie that happened, like that hike up back in was enjoyable. The hike out with Wade on the back was enjoyable, and like coming out, it was a testament of true brotherhood, sisterhood, like just the essence of what being an outdoorsman is really, truly, truly about. It made me super grateful and appreciative for what I've gotten to be able to do and achieve in my life thus far. Made me even more thankful for the relationships and the friendships that have ultimately been able to be created and just taking care of each other. And gives me hope for really the outdoor heritage, for the outdoor community, and for really everything that this podcast and what ultimately working to do with the Experience More podcast is all about, is just bringing people together to experience more of life. And it's not just the physical sense, but it's how we go through and treat one another. It's how we carry each other. It's how we carry ourselves, and being the stewards of not just the land, but of the culture of what it is we all love to do. Right. So those guys showed up, helped me pack it out. It was an awesome pack out. At that point in time, we got everything loaded up. Said farewells to those guys. They had come all out ready to rock with their packs. And then I headed back to Tina. We ended up grabbing something to eat. And then that Saturday, Tina and I, we packed everything up. And then we just spent the day in Pagosa as a family, hung out. We ate some green chilies. We went to a little food market on Saturday there, and just kind of saw the rest of the town, hung out a little bit, ate some good food, stopped at the malt shop, which I saw that was for sale. But that's a malt shop that I had been going to ever since I was 8 years old on my first elk hunting trip, and going to that little local malt shop right there, right next to the bow rack and the bow shops down there. So there's a lot of memories. I mean, I'm 35 years old now, and to think that, I've been doing this, been blessed to do this for so long, have, a father who brought me along to share that experience at a very young age. It's only something that I hope and wish to be able to do for my daughter, future kids, really for my entire family, and then for every one of you guys who ultimately is following along, is the opportunity to go out and to hunt and to experience, the great wilderness of the Rocky Mountains is open to everyone. Everyone's able to go through and do it, but I will tell you, it is relentless. It will test you. It'll humble you. And you have to open it with a sense of really no expectations other than you are going to learn. And you are going to learn more about life, more about yourself. And I think it's a great opportunity for anyone and everyone who might be struggling with who they are or what they're doing to go out and don't have any expectations of getting an animal, but to go just chase a bull. Put it in perspective. I've been hunting ever since I was 8 years old with my dad. It's quite a few years, 35. I've shot in 2 bull elk. If I was just doing it to go through and shoot elk, why would I do it? Majority of individuals who go elk hunting are not successful. Majority of them go through and, they're hiking and packing their bow overall. People spend a lot of time, money, and resources to go out and chase these animals, but it's not just the chase of the animal. It's really the discovery of you and what you're made of and what you're capable of, and really what this world has to offer each and every one of us. So, and really appreciate what we do have, because that is something that most people forget about way too quickly. So, but spent that day, headed back home, and we just traveled on back home. Saturday into Sunday, got home, and now we have memories and stories to be able to share with each and every one of you guys. And, we're looking forward to this year. Honestly, now the goal is to get Tina out on her first elk hunt. She does want to do it. She definitely has to get herself in shape and get ready for that hunt. If it's something she's going to be able to go, not just do, right, but truly enjoy, she's got to be ready for it. So she will most likely be going rifle hunting for that case. But no matter what, it's something that she's got to want to do. It won't be something that's forced for her to do. But the opportunity and everything is there. And she ultimately, she's the one who's saying that she wants to go through and experience that. And I think a big piece is because she actually got to go get a taste of it and what it was like when we were ultimately out there. So I think if I could leave you guys with anything from this episode, and if you followed along to this point, I do appreciate you following along. But it's just bring the people with you, right? Go out and experience it yourself first, right? Take that time. Don't feel bad about going out and wanting to do things solo or have that experience. Or maybe you don't have someone, reach out to a friend who you do know goes out and does that stuff. If you need pointers or help or advice, or, if you're someone who does go out regularly, ask, if there's that one other individual who wants to come along with you and, tag along, maybe not even to hunt, but to just be a steward. And I would say if you're going out with friends, even if you don't have a tag for an out-of-state hunt in Colorado, Idaho, New Mexico, they're going to be pushing that $700 to $800, right? So it is not something that is a super simple, easy thing. It's definitely doable. You could put away money every single month to ultimately pay for that tag. And then outside of that, you can go elk hunting for a few $1,000s. It just depends on what you want it to ultimately look like, right? If you're sleeping in your truck, a tent, driving out there, all you need to do is have your tag, gas. Once you have your gear, you're good. But really at that point, it's you just need to be able to get yourself out there to go experience it, right? So you don't need all the glitz and glamour and all the different things that I ultimately even said earlier. It's just all you need is the basics to be able to get out there and do it. You don't need a $3,000 bow setup. You can literally go I have a bear bow back here that literally when I bought it as a bear bow itself was $250 at Bass Pro, right? So it's definitely doable, but you have to make the decision to go first. And maybe it's not going hunting. Maybe it is just going out and tagging along with a friend and being a pack mule. So, but outside of that, I would encourage you to bring someone along to go out, experience it yourself, and to just pass on that knowledge and that experience to other individuals, because it's fucking awesome. To this day, the greatest thing that I personally get to go out and ultimately do is allow people to have that experience and share that experience and memories and everything with friends, family, loved ones, and all of you guys be able to come back here and share that as well. So, but definitely if you're new, appreciate the follow along. If you have not done so yet, I would greatly appreciate a review on the podcast. Definitely if you want to go back in, check out some of the earlier episodes, you can do that. But I know this is a little bit longer of a one, definitely more of a storyboard piece. So I would love to be able to hear review, feedback. If you get the opportunity to go through, share the episode, whether it's on your social platforms. Hopefully when I can go through and get this one set up onto YouTube, if you guys can go through, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and really just, the goal with the Overdose Outdoors channel is really it's the Overdose Outdoors brand itself. And that is going to be something that evolves forward from the hats, the shirts, everything, to really there's a bigger piece to it of looking at trying to give other individuals opportunities to go on hunts and trips and experiences that, maybe they didn't have beforehand. And outside of that, be able to share those experiences and memories ultimately with other people. So a lot of cool things ultimately in the works. Going to be working closely, of course, with Tina on stuff, working with my brother, Nick, who's a phenomenal photographer, videographer, my other brother, Zach, who's a phenomenal pilot, and just different projects and things we ultimately want to work together there, as well as, honestly, any of you guys who are ultimately out there in the outdoor space, and just collaborative efforts of just bringing people along for different experiences and just being able to share. Really, it's the Overdose Outdoors experience is just sharing the entire outdoor community, not just like Overdose Outdoors is not just one, right? Like the outdoors is an addiction that should be shared with everyone, right? And it's something that, can be very, very addictive, but it takes a few people to go through and ultimately get you into the gateway. So, but that being said, a lot of different things ultimately coming with that. Like, subscribe, share with friends, and just be ready to rock and roll for the next episode. I love you guys. Let's make it a great week. We'll see you next time.